Bon après-midi tout le monde. Merci.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being there. I call this meeting to order. Welcome to meeting 53 of this committee. Pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and the motion adopted by the committee on Wednesday, January 26, 2022, the committee is meeting to study the proposed acquisition of Shaw by Rogers. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the House of Order of Thursday, June 23, 2022. This afternoon, for this first hour of hearings, we have the opportunity to have many people here with us.
Individual Mr. Iacobucci, professor at the University of Toronto's Faculty of Law. Thanks for being with us, Mr. Iacobucci. We have Ben Klass, PhD candidate at Carleton University, Senior Research Associate at the Canadian Media Concentration Research Project. We have from Global Live Communications Corporation, Anthony Lacavera, who's the chairman. Thanks for being with us in person here in Ottawa. And also from Global Live, we have Simon Lockie. We have from TechSavvy Solutions, Inc., Andy Kaplan-Mirth, Vice President, Regulatory and Carrier Affairs, and Jessica Rootleg, who's a Regulatory Counsel, both with us virtually. So thanks for being here, everyone. And without further ado, we'll start for the first testimony with Mr. Iacobucci for 5 minutes. The floor is yours.
Okay, well, first of all, thank you, everybody. Thank you to the committee for having me here today to speak with you. So I come at this from the perspective of an academic interested in competition law. And let me state my conclusion about the competition law issues at the outset. In my view, the Competition Tribunal did an excellent job in assessing the competitive effects of the Rogers-Shaw Videotron transactions. Let me also say that in competition law cases, maybe even more than in any other areas of law, the particular facts matter, and the tribunal is in a much better position than I am to weigh the evidence. But on my reading of its opinion, it weighed that evidence carefully and persuasively. So the evidence in this case was vast. There were 40 witnesses, thousands of pages of documents, yet the tribunal's reasons provide a thorough and coherent account of that evidence and explained in detail and to me convincingly its reasons for deciding that the merger would not substantially lessen or prevent competition. So given my respect for this decision, my remarks in many ways will just draw significantly from the tribunal's analysis. But a quick word on process first. I think it's important to acknowledge that the speed at which the tribunal heard and disposed of this case, and doing so in such a thorough manner, is laudable, as is the Federal Court of Appeals' expedited hearing of the appeal and dismissal of the appeal. Mergers are oftentimes sensitive, and the tribunal and the Federal Court of Appeal deserve credit for their efforts in this case, in my opinion. On the merits, again, I think the tribunal's decision is a model in kind of a careful review and probing of the evidence and weighing it against competition law principles. Competition law focuses on competition, and the tribunal carefully reviewed the evidence as to why competition is unlikely to suffer as a consequence of the transaction. At root, Shaw's divestiture of freedom to Videotron prior to any acquisition of Shaw by Rogers diminished the competitive concerns about the acquisition. So in Ontario, Shaw only competed through freedom in wireless, and so that divestiture took care of competition concerns in Ontario, as the commissioner conceded. Shaw would continue to have a presence in Alberta and BC post-merger, but its market shares were relatively small, and so the competition concerns weren't as acute. Moreover, the tribunal, I think, quite carefully reviewed the argument about whether Videotron would be an effective competitor and concluded that given its track record of disruption, its fully costed and detailed strategy going forward, I think the tribunal reasonably concluded that it would continue to be an effective competitor. Indeed, although not necessary to the outcome, the tribunal suggested that the Videotron's acquisition of freedom may in fact have some pro-competitive effects by invigorating freedom. So those are the basic factual findings that led to the merger's approval. Unlike some other contested mergers, there actually weren't very many interesting legal questions at stake in this case, purely legal questions. The commissioner made a couple of legal arguments before the tribunal and then ultimately the Federal Court of Appeal that didn't convince either the tribunal or the Court of Appeal and weren't especially convincing to me. I think the most significant argument was that the commissioner argued that the tribunal ought to have considered the initially proposed transaction, that is, Rogers purchasing Shaw outright, rather than the modified transaction in which Rogers would only acquire Shaw after the divestiture of Freedom to Videotron. It's conceivable that this difference could have mattered. For example, prominently, if the original deal were considered, found to be anti-competitive, and the sale of Freedom were proposed as a remedy, then the burden would arguably have been on the merging parties to show that the remedy addressed the anti-competitive effects of the deal. On the other hand, if the tribunal considers only the modified deal, then the burden is on the commissioner to show that the deal remained anti-competitive despite the divestiture of Freedom. So conceivably, this decision could have mattered, but both the tribunal and I think the Federal Court of Appeal reasonably concluded that the tribunal ought not to consider a deal that would never happen and instead focus its attention on the deal that was actually being proposed. This makes sense to me. Courts and tribunals do not normally spend a lot of time considering moot questions. But in any event, both the tribunal and the Federal Court of Appeal pointed out that deciding otherwise would not have made much of a difference in this case. In fact, I thought the Federal Court of Appeal in particular was excellent in its reason in explaining why this burden didn't matter much. First, in theory, a burden might matter where there is a gap in the evidence, right? So if you can't prove something because there's a gap in the evidence, then where the burden is allocated might matter. It might also matter where there's a tiebreaker, right? That the adjudicator can't make up its mind between two positions. Well, the party that has the burden of proof is going to lose that case. Well, neither of these conditions were met here. The evidence was as thorough as the tribunal reviewed in detail and the Federal Court of Appeal acknowledged. And the tribunal, I don't think, regarded this as an especially close case. This was not an anti-competitive merger in the tribunal's view, and indeed it might even had some pro-competitive properties. So whether the burden of proof was on one side or the other, I just don't think much mattered in this case. Now, I might imagine that in some cases, an 11th hour change to a deal could create some concerns about the scheduling of a hearing, right? If there's a preparation for one deal and at the 11th hour it switched to another, there could be some procedural fairness questions. Again, the tribunal considered this. The Federal Court of Appeal considered this. Both of them concluded that the commissioner had sufficient notice of the modified transactions to prepare for the hearing. So there was no procedural unfairness. So I think the tribunal's conclusion that it was going to consider the modified deal was a sensible one. And I think although in the end, it might not have mattered much one way or the other. So that was, I think, the most interesting of the legal issues. And so I'll just conclude by saying I think the tribunal's decision and the Federal Court of Appeal's, I think, respect for that decision were persuasive to me as a matter of competition law. And I'll stop there. Thank you.
Merci, Professor Iacobucci.
Thank you very much, Professor Iacobucci, and I'll give the floor to Mr. Klaas for 5 minutes.
Thank you for inviting me to be here today. When last we spoke, Rogers' network had gone dark from coast to coast, disrupting the lives of families across the country and grinding business to a halt. The outage should have served as a wake-up call that bigger is not always better, especially when it comes to the essential services that we all rely on in our daily lives. This committee got it right when it took the view that the merger should not be permitted to proceed. But unelected regulators have moved the deal forward anyway. It is now up to the minister to decide, and while it's widely expected that he's going to give approval, doing so would, in my opinion, be a mistake. This disconnect has me wondering, what is our priority in this country? Is it to promote competition, or are we more concerned with catering to big business and paying deference to the corporate effort to control crucial markets? I'd like to offer 3 general thoughts on these questions. First, I'd like to believe that our priority is competition, but actions speak louder than words. I've been studying telecommunication for 10 years now through 2 degrees, and I'm getting tired of hearing nice words being used to paper over harmful, wrong decisions. From the consumer's perspective, Canada's telecom markets were in a woeful state when I began my studies, and as CBC's Marketplace recently reported, we continue to pay among the highest prices for service in the developed world. The merging parties, each of which is controlled by a family of billionaires, are in a rush to get the merger approved because they stand to benefit tremendously. I think we all know that consumers, working people, and small businesses will be on the hook once this deal goes through. The tribunal has approved the merger, but its decision was not exactly a ringing endorsement. That's because the bar is set so low that the companies only had to prove that price increases caused by this merger would not be substantial. So the tribunal can accept that mobile prices will increase because of the deal, approve it anyway, and call it a win for competition. I've said it before and I'll say it again. You can put lipstick on a pig, but you can't make it sing. The tribunal's decree was based on arcane rules and opaque information presented by competing experts. But if you leave aside all the assumptions, abstractions, and redactions, and look around the world, you'll see that people here are paying a fraction of the price for mobile connectivity elsewhere compared to what we pay here. We need to aim higher and be more ambitious. We can do better than simply preserving the status quo if you even accept that that's what this merger will do. Second, this merger has been set on a collision course with the CRTC and with the future of competition more broadly in telecommunications. Beyond the lackluster future facing mobile customers, there are grave concerns with the tribunal's decision to approve this merger. Consider that in order to get the deal approved, Rogers convinced the tribunal to accept a series of very generous arrangements it set up, which ostensibly will help Videotron expand into wireless and home internet markets in the rest of Canada. I understand that Rogers wants to get bigger and why Videotron wants to seize this opportunity to expand. These telecom giants are simply doing what they do. But let's not pretend that they're generous to anyone but their shareholders and executives. Rogers' offer of very generous terms for network access, in short, is simply too good to be true. For starters, what are we to make of a situation where a dominant firm chooses who its rivals will be and offers them special favors? The fact is that dominant telecom companies like Rogers, Bell, and TELUS have a long history of using complex agreements like these to their advantage. They dangle these offers in front of regulators and competitors because they're too good to refuse, but the reality is that they use them to control their competitors, not to give them a boost. By approving these agreements, the tribunal has created a serious conflict. That is because an agreement such as this one, whereby a dominant provider gives special treatment to itself or others, may very well be illegal under the Telecommunications Act. In fact, a complaint has already been filed at the CRTC that credibly alleges this agreement will undermine competition for home broadband services across the country. I do not believe that Parliament could have intended for a deal approved under one act to conflict with the other in this case. But in the meantime, the CRTC will be dealing with the mess as this offending merger draws closer to completion. My last message is that this can all be stopped before it's too late. I continue to believe that this merger will be harmful. But Rogers, Shaw, and Videotron have successfully navigated past the first two of three barriers that it has faced. In my view, the regulators have gotten it wrong, but where they failed, the minister still has a chance to get it right. His role and responsibilities go far beyond simply rubber stamping corporate deals and selling them as a win to the public. He has broad powers to act in the public interest, powers that allow for a much broader consideration of the public good than the regulators' narrow frameworks permit them. The minister still has a chance to do what he should have done the merger was announced, stop it in its tracks. He has a chance to show these corporations that they cannot run roughshod over the Canadian public and the institutions intended to ensure that our society flourishes. The path forward for the minister is simple. Instead of giving these companies what they want, he should force them to compete. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Klaas will now.
Merci, Monsieur Klaas. Nous allons maintenant passer à Monsieur Lacavera, 5 minutes. Je vous remercie de m'avoir invité à venir m'entretenir avec vous aujourd'hui. D'après moi, cette fusion est une mauvaise idée et les Canadiens le savent. D'après un sondage Angus Reid, 8 Canadiens sur 10.
Just one moment. You're saying there's a problem with the translation? One moment.
Just waiting for confirmation that translation is back. That's why. Ça va, monsieur? C'est bon?
Is it working? It's fine? Okay. Please, go ahead.
The merger must not be allowed to proceed. Angus Reid polling suggests clearly that 8 in 10 Canadians, and in fact 9 in 10 existing Rogers and Shaw customers, oppose this merger because it obviously will create less choice and higher prices for Canadians. All sorts of parties in terms of public advocates, public interest advocates, academics, all sorts of parties oppose this merger. The Conservative Party, the NDP Party, a number of Liberal caucus members where consumers will be directly affected in Ontario, BC, and Alberta. The Competition Commissioner opposes this merger and did so under an act that we all recognize as deficient and is currently being overhauled by this government. So we recommend, and we're calling on the minister to step in and block this anti-competitive merger. Very importantly, there is nothing anti-Videotron about blocking this anti-competitive merger. And once the government saves Canadians from this anti-competitive merger, a fair and open and transparent process can be run for the Freedom Mobile assets to the extent the Shaw family would like to sell them. The government can oversee a process to ensure they go to a party that is qualified and that will ensure more competition for Canadians. So again, there's nothing anti-Videotron about blocking this anti-competitive merger. It's just the only mechanism left after the failure under the old Competition Act. The only mechanism left is for the minister to step in and decline a wireless license transfer to Videotron. Just by way of context and background, we at GlobalEye have been competing in the Canadian telecom industry for 25 years. We started competing in long-distance services back in the day. We competed in home phone and internet service and brought prices down in those three categories. And then we founded, built, and operated a facilities-based, independent, pure-play wireless carrier called Wind Mobile. And we successfully brought prices down 20%. And that meant an average household savings of $400 a year, whether you were a Wind Mobile customer or not. We're very proud of what we achieved for Canadians in the past 25 years in reducing prices. When we were in the process of continuing to build Wind, from zero to almost $500 million a year in revenue, from zero to 1 million subscribers, from zero and actually startup losses to positive $70 million of EBITDA when Shaw acquired the company, we were really committed to the long term to continuing to build the business. Unfortunately, in 2015, our governance was such that when Shaw approached the company with an attractive price, we were dragged into a sale to Shaw. We very publicly opposed that sale to Shaw because our independent, pure-play business model was proven, and Canadians were voting with their feet, and the growth of the business was spectacular, and we'd crossed strongly into positive EBITDA. But we were dragged into that sale, and as I say, we opposed it. At this point, we were, for me, et donc pour moi, Wind était une affaire.
Wind was something that was unfinished. My goal was always to provide lower prices, better service, and more choice to all Canadians in all provinces and territories.
Much unfinished business for us. And so when Rogers announced the proposed acquisition of Shaw, we immediately contacted Rogers and expressed our interest in re-entering the Canadian wireless market. Rogers told us they were not going to be selling any assets, and they were definitive about it, and that regardless, that we would not be entertained in any event. After a year of pressing Rogers, we finally submitted a funded, all-cash, no financing condition offer for $3.75 billion for the Freedom Mobile business. And we were looking to re-enter and, again, finish the work in the business that we'd started. Rogers did not entertain our offer for the obvious reason that we are an actual competitor. We actually had a track record of bringing prices down. And they were permitted, and are being permitted potentially with this merger, to select who their new competitor is going to be. In no universe does it make sense for a company like Rogers to be able to select who their competitor is going to be and then prop them up with a series of commercial agreements that we see now may actually be in violation of the Telecom Act. We call on the minister to block this anti-competitive merger. There is nothing anti-Videotron about blocking this anti-competitive merger and saving Canadians from it. Once the minister steps in and does that, to the extent the Shaw family wants to sell, the minister can oversee, the government can oversee a fair, open, and transparent process and ensure the best outcome for Canadians. Ensure the acquirer of Freedom is committed to continuing to invest in networks, to buy more spectrum, to build into rural and Indigenous communities, to create more jobs, to bring prices down for Canadians, bring more innovation to the market, just as we did with Wind Mobile. Wireless networks are as important as roads in the digital economy. And as such, wireless networks need to be affordable, available, and accessible to all Canadians. Thank you. Look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lacavera. We'll now turn to our final testimony from TechSavvy. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chairs, and committee members for the opportunity to speak with you. I'm Andy Kaplan-Mirth, VP Regulatory and Carrier Affairs at TechSavvy, an independent Canadian internet, phone, and TV service provider. I'm joined by my colleague Jessica Rutledge, Regulatory Counsel at TechSavvy. We're pleased that the committee is reconvening to examine the Rogers-Shaw merger in light of how the deal has evolved. In particular, to sweeten Videotron's acquisition of the Freedom mobile business, Rogers has offered Videotron preferential wholesale terms, such as discounted wholesale access rates and discounted transport capacity. This sweetheart wholesale deal is where TechSavvy can offer a unique perspective. I'll give you a bit of background on our business model. TechSavvy has been serving customers for over 25 years. We have almost 300,000 customers across Canada. In Chatham-Kent and surrounding communities in southwestern Ontario, we have invested and continue to invest in building our own facilities, including our growing fiber-to-the-home network. In the rest of Canada, we connect customers through a combination of wholesale services that we buy from the large incumbent carriers in their serving areas, including Rogers, Shaw, and Videotron, and our own facilities across the country. The CRTC requires incumbents to offer this wholesale access in order to create competition. In this model, the wholesale rates are the largest cost component of our business. If the rates are too high, we can't offer competitive retail prices. In 2019, the CRTC found that wholesale tariff rates charged by the incumbents were massively inflated, and they dramatically reduced those rates. While the incumbents' appeals of this decision to the Federal Court of Appeal, to the Supreme Court, and to Cabinet all failed, the CRTC reviewed its own decision and reverted to almost the same rates as before the process. Unfortunately, Cabinet later rejected several petitions to overturn that decision. Since then, the higher rates have destabilized this industry. 3 of the largest wholesale competitors, other than TechSavvy, have exited the market within the year, including VMedia, which was acquired by Videotron. TechSavvy is losing customers and has had to put investment plans on hold, including plans to purchase spectrum. The wholesale regime is failing, and consumers have been paying the price. Internet prices in Canada continue to rise, including 13% annual increases for some of the most popular speeds. So why is this important? The regulated wholesale rates are the context for the Rogers and Videotron arrangements. Rogers could have provided Videotron with wholesale services using the regulated wholesale rates, as for any other competitor, but they didn't. They knew that the current wholesale rates would not pass muster for the competition process, since they would not have allowed Videotron to sufficiently compete. Rogers needed Videotron to be seen as a credible competitor to get its merger through. So instead, Rogers is offering Videotron lower, favorable wholesale rates and terms. By doing this, Rogers is tacitly acknowledging that the current regulated wholesale rates are so inflated that they are not feasible to support competition. They're also showing that they can profitably offer rates below the tariff. Because of the CRTC's failure to set appropriate wholesale rates, large incumbent carriers can leverage the inflated rates that they fought for to work out deals between each other with preferential terms that would further harm independent competitors. In short, the largest telecom merger in history is predicated on unlawful and anti-competitive agreements between incumbent carriers. The Telecommunications Act prohibits carriers from granting an undue or unreasonable preference to some companies and not to others. TekSavvy has asked the CRTC to review the Rogers Videotron wholesale deal, and we're calling on the minister not to approve the deal until the CRTC has made its decision. If our application is successful, the CRTC could void the Rogers and Videotron side deal, or it could require Rogers to offer those same terms and discounts to all competitors. If we had a properly regulated, robust, and effective wholesale regime, we would not need a patchwork of side deals or 10-year behavioral commitments for rates and terms. If we had workable, regulated rates like the lower 2019 rates, Rogers merging with Shaw wouldn't have the same impact because consumers would have their choice of affordable and competitive options. If the government addressed the unjust wholesale rates, wholesale competitors would be able to offer lower prices on what is now an essential utility for consumers and give consumers' pocketbooks some much-needed relief in today's cost of living crisis. Thank you again, and we look forward to your questions.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Cape.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kaplan-Murth. We will continue with the discussion with Mr. Williams for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Today we've heard from quite a few experts, obviously, looking at the whole convoluted, complicated situation that we're in, looking at a big merger here in Canada. One of the things that I start thinking about is how do we get the fundamentals right? And we're looking at really competition as a whole across Canada. Why is competition important? Because when we have competition, Canadians have choices, they have better service, and they have better prices. And that's evidently, especially going through high inflation, what should be top of all of our minds as parliamentarians right now. When we look at this, we hear from academics and from experts on Competition Act saying that we've done this or we've done the other. The most alarming stat or fact out of this case that concerns me is that Rogers, in looking to go and buy an asset or a competitor, was given carte blanche in picking who its competitor would be. So Rogers, being the #1 market shareholder in telecommunications in all of Canada, was allowed to freely go, and Shaw gave them the full authority to go pick who their competitor would be, or maybe more importantly, to decide to pick who they wouldn't be dealing with. And so in talking to Global Ivy here, I know Distributel is another one, and there might have been others. Mr. Lacouveris, in your own words, do you feel that the process of the divestiture process was fair?
Thank you for the question. The process was, from our perspective, secretive, closed door. We were not included in it. Our offer in the end was $900 million higher than the offer that Roger accepted. But that's simply because we have a track record of actually competing. And when a company like Rogers is able to select who their competitor is, of course, their job actually, from the ownership and leadership's perspective, is to select the weakest possible competitor they can that will get approved by government. And so this is why, again, we really think government needs to intervene and oversee a fair and open and transparent process.
And it wasn't just yourself. There was, so Distributel, as far as you know, was another competitor. So there was others.
Yes. Our understanding is their offer was essentially even
weren't
higher than
engaged
ours.
at all with that divestiture.
That's our understanding. And
again, I think a lot of Canadians would be alarmed to hear that in this deal, when we're looking at side deals, there was a lot of other aspects to this. Mr. Klaas, you talked about, I guess, the share of complementary resources that Videotron would have had with Rogers at the time. In your opinion, can Videotron achieve success with freedom without the complementary resources that they have access to, I think, in different markets in Canada?
I think that it puts Videotron in a difficult position, the fact that it becomes reliant on Rogers for certain types of access. So first of all, the nature of those access agreements, we don't know the exact facts. It's going to have to go to the CRTC to see just how sort of preferential or discriminatory they are. But the fact is that Videotron is relying on Rogers to provide those types of services. So that gives Rogers, I think, a substantial measure of control. They're essentially inviting Videotron into the club, right? And so I think part of the Competition Bureau's stance in this market is that a maverick competitor is the best way to achieve competition, a competitor that does not move with the flock. And in your initial question, you asked, how do we get back to basics on getting competition and good prices in this market? And one of the answers to that is removing the dominance of the original providers, right? These are companies that have been in the market for 30 years, Rogers, TELUS, Bell, and they are firmly in control of it. They've maintained a 90% share over even the 10 years of a fourth carrier policy. So I think it's very important that you have a competitor that's not reliant in this way on one of the dominant providers, right?
Mr. Lacavera, you have some experience from this back from your Wind Mobile days. So I'll ask you if you agree with TekSavvy in saying that the special network access rates Rogers have given Videotron is illegal under the Telecommunications Act.
We don't know the specifics right now, but certainly it would seem that during the Competition Tribunal proceedings, they were very clear about how favorable the rates were. And I do think it's pretty clear that Videotron is going to need those preferred rates in order to be able to compete outside of its core cable footprint. They have the benefit of network in Quebec. They don't have the benefit of any brand equity or any network outside of Quebec.
Do you feel that you could have been offered those same rates if you were engaged with them, or do you think that was a special offer?
I think that Rogers doesn't want to see any real competition in the market, and so I think that we would have been challenged to get access to those rates, but in their desperation to try to get the merger approved, we don't really know what Rogers would have offered, and what they ultimately did offer to Videotron needs to be drawn out now in a proceeding with the CRTC to see if it actually is undue preference and illegal.
Mr. Kaplan-Meier, if the CRTC approves the challenge of Rogers' rate deal with Videotron, declares it illegal under the Telecommunications Act, what does the Competition Tribunal's decision look like, given how much emphasis is put on the rate and their approval of the merger?
If the CRTC ends up, throwing out that deal that ends up being illegal, then it wouldn't be able to form the basis of Videotron's ability to compete on wireline, wherever that deal is being offered to them. And again, we know very little about that deal, so presumably out west, at least. So Videotron wouldn't be able to use existing wholesale regulatory rates, regulated rates, to compete. They wouldn't be a viable competitor on that, and it would mean that the Bureau, the Tribunal's analysis about Videotron's ability to offer bundled services wouldn't be valid anymore, wouldn't be correct.
Thank you very much. MP Dong for 6 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chair. Also, thanks to the witnesses for coming today. My first question, line of question, goes to Mr. Lacavera. Mr. Lacavera, you talked about how anti-competitive the remedy was, but I can't help to think that, to ask, how would freedom under Global Live be different from being, freedom under Quebec Core? And, some of the differences, practical differences you'll put in place or your proposal could be, that would be beneficial to consumers.
Thank you for the question. So I did not say that the remedy was anti-competitive. What I said was the merger is anti-competitive and must be stopped. Then what we're recommending is that the government oversee a fair and open and transparent process to determine who the right acquirer is of freedom for the benefit of Canadians, to ensure the best outcome for Canadians. But to differentiate ourselves versus Quebec Core, so Global Live has a 25-year history of building independent telecom competitors. And by independent, as I mean, is we don't have any legacy cable or phone business to protect. We were an independent competitor, not owned by a cable or phone company. And Wind Mobile, when it was under our ownership, was an independent pure-play wireless company. And that means we didn't have any legacy cable or legacy telephone business they were looking to protect.
So can I understand this as that you would be investing in new networks?
Very much so. I mean, in addition to the upfront purchase price that we offered for the Freedom Mobile, we of course would be participating. We would look to participate in upcoming auctions and invest in network. And I did mention rural and indigenous communities, and broadly that we need to have affordable, accessible wireless networks for all Canadians. That was our original business plan with Wind. We only got as far as Ontario, BC, and Alberta before, as I mentioned, we were dragged into a sale to Shaw.
And in this case, you weren't invited by Rogers to enter bid for Freedom. Is that true?
No, quite the opposite. We were pursuing Rogers and had made our interest known, and Rogers did not want to entertain our offer. This committee may hear from Rogers later today or shortly that they could not entertain our offer because we did not enter an NDA with them. This is untrue. Rogers proposed an NDA to us that was tantamount to shutting down our proposal and bid before it even started. It gave them unfettered veto over our capital partners, over our advisors. It was a gag order in terms of discussing anything with government about our proposal or publicly. And so our bid would have been shut down before it started. We would not be sitting here talking to you today had we signed that NDA. So we did sign an NDA back to Rogers, one that was a market standard NDA that would have protected all of their confidential information. That said, we did not need to even have an NDA. We made an offer on an unsolicited funded basis anyway because of our knowledge of the business. We built the business.
I was going to ask you that question, but thanks for providing that extra information. How Global Life would be less dependent on TELUS and by extension to Bell than Videotron would be to Rogers?
I think they're totally different propositions. We are jointly investing in a shared network. We will first be acquiring spectrum. Would we be successful in winning the government's process to acquire Freedom if we were chosen? We would first be buying all that spectrum and contributing it to a shared network with TELUS, and then contributing on an ongoing basis. Contributing on an ongoing basis spectrum and network into that sharing agreement. So
I want to give a little bit of time to Professor Iacobucci. Professor Iacobucci, you heard the testimonies, and to your earlier comment, you think that the decision was fair. But obviously, you know, the testimonies in the last couple of minutes says the opposite. And how would you assess that? And any recommendations to lawmakers like us that if Competition Act is sufficient, if not, how would we improve it?
Okay. There's a lot there. Let me say, I mean, I think ultimately, you know, I think the word somebody said, you know, Rogers got carte blanche on picking its competitors. I don't think that's quite fair to the tribunal's analysis of this. That is, the tribunal took very seriously the commissioner's argument that Videotron would not be an effective competitor, and it went through, and I think quite a bit of detail about its reasons for concluding that actually Videotron might well be an effective competitor. And so I think I would take a little bit of issue with that idea that it's carte blanche, because in fact part of the competition hearing was an assessment of Videotron's capacity to compete going forward. Another thing that has come up in the discussion so far is this idea about the wholesale rates and Mr. Kaplan-Murth's comments about those. And I'm agnostic on that question about whether the CRTC has got this right or wrong. I will say this: that's a really tough thing to get right, and so I don't envy the CRTC's task on that. It's a difficult one. But at the same time, I mean, it is interesting to hear the comments from Global Live that, so on the one hand, you've got Tech Savvy saying it would be impossible. You know, the current rates are making it impossible to compete. And then,
sorry, I got to stop you there. That you said the tribunal was the process itself to prove Videotron's competitiveness, but the result doesn't say that it's the most competitive proponent, right?
That's quite right. The purpose of the law is not to get into sort of fine-tuning what happens in markets. So competition law, I think, starts from the proposition that.
So do you think allowing
Not only the
Rogers
reason
to
whether the
take?
case
I'm
for-
sorry,
Do you think
Mr.
allowing Rogers to pick who the competitor is going to be is?
Mr.
Oh,
Dung, Mr. Dung, my turn to stop you there because your time's out. We have to go to Monsieur Lemire maintenant pour 6 minutes.
Mr. Lemay, for 6 minutes, go ahead.
Monsieur le
Mr. Chair, thank you. I'm going to once again refer to Project Fox. I heard something in the preliminary remarks in that one of the support was from the NDP. That's something we've heard from Project Fox. We want to continue the application of this top-of-house strategy, in particular with the leader, Jagmeet Singh, who can ask questions of the Prime Minister during question period.
slow the deal. C'est des mots qui sont
Those are words that are quite heavy, especially when we're acting that way in committee. Now, I'll continue with what we heard today, in particular, a pressure from TELUS Bell and other stakeholders, including academics. In another document that was made public by the court, in these third-party stakeholders, there is the Canadian Media Concentration Research Project. My question for Mr. Klaas is, have you had any communications with TELUS, and have you dissociated yourself or apart from this in this way of use, given your intellectual property and your own judgment under these circumstances?
I have never taken money from Bell or TELUS. Like most people, I give them my money. I actually have already seen that document. I think they had identified stakeholders that they would seek to co-opt. I have met with people from TELUS on one occasion, an academic named John Gannon, to discuss a white paper they published about spectrum policy. There's never any exchange of money. This topic of the merger did not come up. I'm 100% independent in the comments I provide today, and I think if you go through the record of things I've said in public and published, you'll see that it doesn't matter what color the brand logo is in. I generally oppose anti-competitive or unfair behavior by those companies.
merci de nommer.
Thank you for giving that name, because I thought it was important to really give you the opportunity to clear your reputation in this kind of situation. Your editorial in the Globe and Mail stated that Videotron was the best solution possible to ensure competition and play the role of the fourth player in the telecommunications market. You also stated that Videotron saw great success in Quebec by increasing its presence, reducing prices, and its good presence on the market. The fact that prices are much lower in Quebec shows that Videotron could be a serious competitor to meet consumers' demands to lower prices elsewhere in Canada. Do you agree?
I do agree that, so for years, in the yearly reports published by Canadian Media Concentration Research Project, we do an analysis of provincial markets for mobile wireless service. I'm chiefly responsible for that section, and I definitely agree that Quebec, in recent years, due to Videotron, has set an example of the type of competition that could emerge from the fourth carrier policy. That being said, I think the equation changes slightly when Videotron leaves Quebec. And to be clear, I would like to see them succeed. And if Videotron does step into the role that Freedom did, I think that there is a chance that they could do so. I would like to see outcomes that are beneficial for consumers. However, I think that there's a substantial risk that in transferring Videotron into the shoes of Freedom, but removing chiefly its connection to the underlying broadband facilities that it has available in its home province and replacing that with these agreements with Rogers, places Videotron in a completely different position in the rest of Canada. And so while I would like to see them succeed, what I've seen in the past, and this is going back since the days of the rotary phone, is those companies like Bell or Rogers that have these arrangements where smaller companies depend on them, they can use that to squeeze them and to eventually crush them. And so with Videotron moving into the rest of Canada, I worry, being so dependent on Rogers, that it won't have the strength that it has in Quebec and that it won't be able to have the effect that it's had there.
Si
If we're looking at the future of this agreement, what would the conditions be that are required so that Videotron can succeed in making those prices lower in the western provinces? And what do you think of the conditions that need to be imposed by other players, such as Bell and TELUS, that to show that they can really negotiate prices that are lower and that they are acting in good faith? Should we require that demonstration at this stage?
I think my position is that the best way forward to promote competition is to block the merger and allow the companies to compete on a market basis.
I'd like to ask a question under the circumstances. I mean, I have less than a minute left. Mr. Iacobucci, would you also like to react to these questions, respond to these questions? What conditions should be imposed on Videotron or for Videotron so that it can lower prices?
Well, again, coming at this from the perspective of competition law, which is where I come at it from, I think what the tribunal did was a careful assessment of that this was not a sort of sweetheart deal by Rogers in order to protect itself from future competition. I think the tribunal took the commissioner's argument seriously that Videotron potentially would not be a vigorous competitor, analyzed that carefully, came to the conclusion that Videotron has a history of success, and there's no reason to think that its success would not continue post-acquisition. So from a competition law perspective, I think the tribunal discharged exactly its duty in answering those questions about the vigorous competition remaining.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Lemire. And next, 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Iacobucci, continue. If right now Videotron was to actually do what you're saying and be more assertive with the rollout as it's been promised, it would be counter to the previous business model going back to 2013, where they've sat on spectrum auction on the successful bidding that they got in British Columbia, Ontario, and Alberta. So what makes you confident that this time they're actually going to perform in the market? And second to that, if they don't, what legal means can the government take to actually bring them back into a line? And then lastly, would it also not be somewhat, I guess, a potential that they could be bought out in the market in the future?
Well, I'll answer the last one first, because I think in some sense that's the easiest one to deal with. If Videotron, if there's a proposal in the future to acquire Videotron by one of the players in the market, there are going to be competition questions surrounding that acquisition. And again, the competition law institutions that we have in this country, I think, are well equipped to address the question of whether a future acquisition would reduce competition substantially. And so to your first question, what makes me think? I'm not going to purport to be an expert on Videotron's business history or its the particulars of its model. I understand where your skepticism, which I think underlies your question, may well come from. At the same time, I think what I am confident in is that the tribunal did a very thorough assessment of what it heard. It was a thorough weighing of the evidence. The commissioner had an opportunity to make its claims that we should not anticipate Videotron being as successful as Shaw might be without the acquisition going forward. So I think it has been fully vetted. The conclusions seemed reasonable from where I sat. I think it's also important, though, and I would acknowledge that it's an assessment that I think the tribunal made with a certain degree of confidence, but predicting the future is always going to be difficult. Yeah. And so this is actually, and this is something the tribunal also alluded to, when you said, well, what happens if it doesn't work out? Well, this is actually an area where if this merger isn't as competitive as we might hope, there is a regulatory oversight here, right? The CRTC can make certain decisions, including withdrawing forbearance if it wished.
Yeah, thank you. I got to move on because I directly wanted to know, and the answer to, like there is nothing really we can do. I'm going to go with Mr. Close. I appreciate your intervention there. I just don't want to, I have a limited time here. I guess, Mr. Close, and what I'm worried about, there is, I mean, if Videotron was later on to be, looked at as a potential takeover from somebody else or a merger, I don't have a lot of confidence because when you look at the history, Bell acquired MTS, TELUS bought Public Mobile, Rogers bought Fido, Shaw bought Wind Mobile. just a few of those things. And now we're looking at Distributel and Bell as a merger. What it looks like, I mean, this is like rearranging the chairs on the Titanic in many respects at the current moment. Is it taking a pause really at the end of the day, probably the best strategy before we lose, another chance to try to set things right?
The answer to that is yes, because while the minister can currently declare that the Videotron must hold on to the spectrum for 10 years, if it comes into a position where it says, well, we've decided that we're going to exit the business or our business model has not panned out as we planned, then they'll be in exactly the position that Shaw is today, with the members of boards like the tribunal saying, well, if we don't approve this merger, what will happen to Videotron? I think effectively there will be no ability to stop that spectrum transfer from going forward in the future, and the best way of dealing with it is to nip it in the bud today.
Thank you. To Mr. Andy Kaplan-Murth and also to Mr. Lacavera, where I'm from right now, there's a couple things that we have. First of all, I'm in Windsor, Ontario, right across from Detroit, Michigan, so we're also benefiting from many roaming charges that people have to deal with. Second to that, it's the auto industry, capital of Canada. And so what we've seen over the years is non-tariff barriers that have stopped Canadian exportation of vehicles into, say, for example, South Korea. So what you can do is you can legally send them there without tariffs, but there's things that the governments do to actually block servicing of the vehicles and so forth. So it makes it difficult to be a consumer and purchaser. I'd like your comments with regards to other potential barriers out there for new competition to come in, whether it's sharing of cell phone towers or other types of mechanisms are currently in place. I mean, we have I think disruptions that can take place by the incumbents from not even doing the things that are supposed to happen right now. And so I'll start with Mr. Andy Kaplan-Murth and then leave some time, please, for Mr. Lacavera. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll speak very, very briefly on this because I really can only speak to kind of our experience in the telecom side. The common sort of theme is the overarching power of dominant providers who control the market and really control all the levers for smaller businesses who are trying to compete in that space. So in our space, that is primarily about wholesale rates, which I've spoken to. It is also right now around access to fiber to the home networks. That's a major challenge that we face, in particular with Bell, who has largely shifted to fiber to the home networks. The wholesale industry is essentially abandoned on their old legacy DSL technology because the CRTC has not advanced its framework one iota since 2017 to allow wholesale access to fiber to the home. That's also part of our challenge, or plays into part of our challenge to the CRTC. There's other ways that they control access to poles and things like that, but those are our primary concerns.
Thank you. And just Mr. Lacavera with the last of my time. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Yeah, look, I think that we're at a really critical moment. The only thing standing between this anti-competitive merger and Canadians is the minister. The minister has all the latitude he needs to just say no to the merger. And as I said earlier, there's nothing anti-Videotron about that. Canadians deserve a fair and open and transparent process to ensure that we have a competitive framework, to ensure we have the right owners of freedom, to ensure that all of the questions you're asking about what can Canadians see looking forward in terms of a competitive market, have the confidence that that's there. All that's happened so far is a secretive closed-door deal between Roger Shaw and Videotron, and Canadians have no idea what the outcome of that's going to be, but it's overwhelmingly clear most people are opposed to it.
Merci, Monsieur Lacavera.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lacavera. And we'll have a quick last round with 4 minutes, Liberals, 4 minutes, Conservatives, 2 minutes for the Bloc and the NDP. We'll start with Mr. Riss.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With my short amount of time today, I'll be addressing my questions to Global Live. I'm just going to state the questions first, and then hopefully you can provide some answers. We've heard a lot today about the ability or the potential of Videotron to be a real fourth carrier in our Canadian oligopoly. But what I haven't heard from Global Live today is why did you sell Freedom Mobile in the first place, and what would make you a better fourth competitor than Videotron? Specifically because we've heard that Videotron would be tied to Rogers, but you would subsequently be tied to the TELUS network. So what's the difference there? You spoke a lot about your communication with Rogers, yet in the briefing you provided, likely all of us here in this office, you didn't really communicate to us as the committee members your interactions with Shaw, because although you stated that your bid was $1 billion more than the bid or the price offered by Videotron to Rogers and Shaw, your bid is in fact different in that it includes, if I remember correctly, the mobile services offered by Shaw that you of course had before. And then finally, in your briefing, you made very serious allegations that since the announcement of the merger, Shaw has starved the Freedom Mobile business while running promotions that essentially give away mobile services to Shaw Mobile customers, with the result that Shaw Mobile has acquired almost 500,000 subscribers, and Freedom Mobile has correspondingly shed hundreds of thousands of customers since the merger was announced. Over to you, Global Live.
Yeah, I'll go in reverse order. Thank you for the questions. Yeah, it's just the results disclosed and the performance of Freedom, I think, are very clear. Shaw's a public company, and Freedom has gone completely sideways as Shaw has stopped competing. The metrics are clear around that. And the Shaw Mobile business that's part of a bundle offering where the subscribers are being heavily subsidized by home internet, cable, and home phone service are also clear. So yes, Freedom has bled a lot of its subscribers in that fashion. In terms of our interaction with Shaw, there has been none. Shaw was in agreements with Rogers that would have, we expect, and I think know, that it would have precluded them from ever engaging with us. In terms of our interaction with TELUS, look, I'm coming up on 50 years old, and I've never worked for anyone yet. I'm not about to start working for anyone. So there's no scenario where Global Live is in bed with TELUS, working for TELUS, that's just not what our history that's all out there clearly shows. But what there is out there now is this idea of a sharing construct with TELUS. And this is incredibly important for the future of competition in Canada, because we're able to invest in share spectrum with TELUS in a shared network, share towers and infrastructure, and enable us to ultimately realize significant efficiencies out of that and pass cost savings through to Canadian consumers in a very reliable.
So just stop you right there.
Yeah.
What would be the difference between Videotron and Rogers doing that versus Global Live and TELUS?
Videotron and Rogers have entered wholesale agreements where, to Mr. Klaas's points earlier, Rogers ultimately has control. It's ultimately Rogers' network. We're talking about a shared ownership of network where we've contributed spectrum that we own into the mix and contribute to radio networks that we own on a shared basis with TELUS. That's the fundamental difference. Are you riding on someone else's network at rates that may be illegal? Well, we'll see where the CRTC goes with that. Or are you investing in a shared network? And that's the scenario with TELUS. Why did we sell? I said very clearly at the outset, we did not want to sell. We were dragged into a sale to Shaw. The business is doing fantastic. As an independent pure play, our business model was validated, and Canadians were voting with their feet. We had almost 1 million subscribers. We voted against selling. When the opportunity emerged surrounding this Rogers-Shaw announcement, we immediately reached out to Rogers and expressed our desire to re-enter. And the reason why Rogers didn't want to talk to us is because we're the only ones that built a successful independent pure play and actually brought prices down for Canadians in the markets we're talking about. We have national ambitions, and we look forward to getting back at it.
Thank you,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Do I have any time left?
You don't. Thank you, Mr. Viss. We'll now turn to Mr. Erskine-Smith for 4 minutes.
Thanks, Joel. Mr. Iacobucci, you referenced the tribunal and court's decisions, and did those decisions comment on this wholesale agreement, this additional preference to that Rogers is providing Videotron, and how that might impact the competitive framework?
They did make reference to that. That's yes.
And they had no concerns?
They didn't seem to have those concerns. One of the things that they noted was that these commitments had been made and would assist in the going forward. They'd also made Videotron had made accepted some of the minister's statements about there would be no transfer of spectrum unless Videotron.
But forget all that. That's
well, no, but that also
but that's not the point. The point is you have a primary player in oligopoly is providing a specific preference to a fourth player, and at the same time we're saying, but that fourth player is going to be disruptive to the first player, and don't you see an obvious challenge in that line of thinking?
Well, this is where I think worst comes to worst, we've got the CRTC as a backstop when it comes to wholesale pricing, if that's what the issues are, right? So back to the questions that were raised earlier.
Okay, and in relation to the wireline assets, I mean, we've been focusing all of our conversation on the wireless assets. But I'll tell you, as a Canadian consumer, when I look at excessive concentration in this sector, and then I see 83% of Shaw's businesses actually and revenues in the wireline space, and Rogers is going to take on even the market concentration is going to be increased to a significant degree in the wireline space. As a Canadian consumer who cares about competition, shouldn't I care about that?
Yeah, I think this is the commissioner, as you know, did not bring a complaint about the wireline assets. So it's difficult for me. And again, mergers are fact-intensive exercises. So I'm not going to, in my armchair, make an assessment about wireline competition when I don't have any facts in front of me. So if you
that's fair, but when you have the dominant player in a tightly regulated oligopoly, as a general principle, it's likely a bad idea to further concentrate that dominant position. No,
if they don't compete in any significant way, the fact that they are both significant in their own markets but don't compete at the moment, that may suggest that this actually won't hurt competition going forward.
In the short term. Well, in the short term, no, because we've heard testimony at this committee repeatedly, actually, that excessive concentration itself hinders competition on a going forward basis. So it might not substantially lessen competition in the short term, but surely we should be concerned about long-term competitive prospects.
You know, there's a debate, as you well know, about this. I personally think that gets awfully speculative. Lots of things can happen in the future. And so speculating, well, gee, I know they don't compete now, but we're still worried about competition because you never know, they might have competed in the future. That's a pretty speculative basis for legal intervention, in my view.
Fair. Although on the economic analysis, I don't think it's speculation to suggest that concentration does hinder competition, and that's really what we're talking about.
Concentration in markets hinders competition. When they're not overlapping, when they're not in the same market, it's not obvious that becoming bigger hurts competition.
Right, but then we define the markets in a very narrow context. We're talking about in a perfect world, we're talking about expanding some of these players to compete nationally. Taking a step back, you know, you've, I think, fairly summarized in some ways the tribunal and the court's decisions to say, look, they came to the right decision on the law. Yeah. From a political standpoint, though, should we be bound by the competition law in making a decision like that? Should the minister be bound by likely to substantially lessen competition? Or do you think the minister should be looking for, in a much more serious pro-competitive way to say what is best for competition for Canadian consumers?
Well, I think I think that the minister has the legal authority as a starting point to decide about how to transfer the spectrum. I think, obviously, as a political matter, there's going to be political things that feature in his decision-making, which I understand. I would just say this. I think, and there's a lot involved. I think Mr. Lacavera's point about how essential wireless is to Canada is all well taken. So there may be considerations that he may want to bring into play in thinking about whether to transfer the spectrum. But I do think that when it comes to competition, I think that the Act gets it right by focusing on will there be a lessening of competition. I think the tribunal did a good job in applying that act, and I think the Federal Court of Appeal did a good job reviewing the tribunal. So I hope whatever the minister's decision-making is going forward, it focuses on things other than just competition, because I think the competition matters were well addressed already.
Yeah, although the standard was substantially lessened instead of
right.
How do we make it best?
Yeah,
anyway,
I mean,
anyway,
yeah,
we're out of time. I think. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Nate. Thank you, Mr. Iacobucci. Monsieur Lemire, la parole est à vous pour 2 minutes.
Mr. Lemire, you have the floor for 2 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to go back to the documents that were tabled by the committee as well. I'll table them here at this committee because I think they're quite relevant as part of our reflections. They're only in English, so I can't really ask TELUS to translate them, so please allow me to table them as is. They're talking about elements where there are direct campaigns involving postcards that can be sent directly to their MPs. There are websites also that encourage people to do so. TELUS and Global Live Vector Network and are set to boost Global Live bid.
Ma question pour monsieur.
My question for Mr. Lacavera, where you were mentioned as well, you're mentioned as a third-party stakeholder, as a former owner and founder of Wind Mobile. Have you spoken with TELUS? Were you consulted? What was the nature of this agreement to boost the Global Live bid, and how much was at stake?
Thank you. Merci pour la question.
Thank you for the question. I want to be specific, so I'll be answering in English.
We have a spectrum and network sharing agreement with TELUS that is an important pillar of our proposal to acquire the former Freedom Mobile, the current Freedom Mobile business, formerly our business Wind Mobile. And so in that context, we've entered a spectrum and network sharing agreement with TELUS.
Là, on parle pas de partage, on parle.
We're not talking about that. We're talking about cash here.
There is no funding of any kind from TELUS to Global Live. That is not part of our proposal and was not part of our funded all-cash offer to Rogers for Freedom Mobile.
Vous êtes à la tête.
You are at the head of a type of business that does speculative investing and so on. How will you be able to respect the firm commitment that was asked of Videotron if Freedom Mobile went with you? And when you talked about negotiations with Rogers, you said they were trying to prevent you from talking. I mean, if you were refusing an NDA, when did things happen?
Be repeated. Could you repeat the translation, please?
Donc,
j'ai pas compris.
There are two aspects. Slowly, please. Sorry. We're trying to fill our time, and we have a lot of questions. So, first of all, you are at the head of a business that does speculative business. How can you firmly commit to a 10-year agreement if you are with Freedom Mobile? And when did you start negotiating with Rogers Shaw? And you said that you did not sign an NDA, but how can you say that they were trying to muzzle you if you didn't?
Okay, I think there's a couple of things there. So we did not sign the NDA because the NDA would have, in fact, prevented us from appearing before you today. We signed back an NDA that was protecting all of Rogers' confidential information, but we took out the components of it that would have prevented us from speaking to government about our proposal, prevented us from talking to capital partners or advisors, and giving Rogers vetoes over them so that they could just shut our bid down before we even got it out.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Le Maire, Monsieur Lacavera.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lemire, and so on, and everybody. Mr. Massé, for just a couple of minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Klaus, there's been reference, not only just this panel, but other panels about the CRTC, and it's played quite a dramatic role in the last 2 years with some of the things that have led up to this moment. Just want to get your opinion about the status of the CRTC right now, and if you have any thoughts about, I mean, there's issues over whether it's even got the resources to be able to, get through a lot of these things on a timely manner. We've seen decisions taking ages affecting business plans. So I'm just curious, because you really don't have a connection where others in the room will have with the CRTC decision-making basis as much. So could I get your opinion on that, please?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that the CRTC plays a crucial role, or at least has the potential to play a crucial role in ironing out a lot of these types of problems that we're discussing here today. I think the conflict, you could almost view it as sort of an inadvertent sort of push to the CRTC this conflict that comes out of this decision with respect to the wireline rates and the preference that's being given to Videotron, it may sort of spur them to actually have to take a serious look at fixing this. But I think at this point we have to wait and see. Things have been very quiet at the CRTC, in particular with respect to what I think are the fundamental telecommunications responsibilities that it oversees in recent years. So I think a lot is riding on this policy direction coming from government. A lot is riding on the direction that the new chairperson takes it in. I have always been a big proponent of the CRTC as a method for direct participation in the economy by citizens and people other than the self-interested parties, like the Bells, the Rogers, the tech savvies of the world. But it hasn't given us a lot of reason to be confident in recent years. So I think I'll qualify my optimism about how things could change with the fact that they haven't been very good there in recent years.
Okay. Thank you for your testimony, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Massé, and thanks to all of our witnesses for being here this afternoon with us. I'll now briefly suspend for the other panel to take their seat. Alors, bon après-midi.
Good afternoon to everyone. We are ready to continue with our last hour of meetings on the acquisition of Shaw by Rogers, and we have for this last hour from Rogers Communications, Tony Staffieri, President and Chief Executive Officer. Thank you for being here. You are with Dean Prévost, President of Integration. From Shaw Communications, Inc., you have Paul McAleese. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that, President of Shaw, and also Trevor English, Executive Vice President, Chief Financial and Corporate Development Office, and from Québecor Media, Pierre-Carl Pelado, President and Chief Executive Officer, and from Vidéotron, Jean-François Lecadre, Vice President of Finance. Thank you for being with us, and my apologies for the slight delay. That's what happens when it's the end of a long day. Thank you for your understanding, and with no further ado, we'll start with Rogers.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Tony Staffieri, and I'm joined by Dean Prévost, President of Integration at Rogers. First, let me say thank you for the opportunity to speak with you. We respect the role of this committee, and we're here to answer your questions. Today's hearing comes after a lengthy judicial process, one that saw the Federal Court of Appeal reaffirm the decision of the Competition Tribunal. Their ruling builds on the decision of the tribunal, who unanimously concluded the transactions between Rogers, Shaw, and Quebecor are pro-competitive. To quote the decision, there will continue to be 4 strong wireless competitors in Alberta and British Columbia. The decision goes further, concluding that Videotron will be a more disruptive wireless carrier because it can quickly build a 5G network across Freedom's footprint and bundle wireless and wireline services at lower prices than Shaw. The decision also made it clear that Rogers will inject a new and substantial source of competition in Alberta and British Columbia. In short, these transactions have gone through a rigorous review and will increase competition. To quote the federal court, it was far from a close case. This committee can feel satisfied that no stone was left unturned. A lot has changed since you first studied this merger and tabled your recommendations. We heard your feedback and that of our minister. Today, we are here to talk about an even better deal, and actually, it's now 2 deals. The first deal will see Quebecor, owner of Videotron, acquire Freedom. And the second deal will see Rogers acquire Shaw's wireline business in markets where we don't compete. After other remedies were reviewed and clear criteria set out, we determined that Videotron, with its proven track record, significant scale, and credible rapid path to 5G, was the most viable option to increase competition. This transaction will increase competition in 2 meaningful ways. First, Videotron will become a disruptive 4th national carrier, reaching nearly 90% of the population. Second, Rogers will become a stronger, more formidable wireline competitor in Western Canada. Rogers' cable footprint reaches parts of Ontario and Eastern Canada. Shaw's cable footprint spans Western Canada and parts of Northern Ontario. There is no overlap. As one national cable company, we will vigorously compete with TELUS in the West. Yes, the deal will increase wireless competition, but it will also increase wireline competition. And that should explain why TELUS has been doing everything it can to oppose this transaction. Let me now turn to the commitments we made in Western Canada. First, we will invest $6.5 billion to improve connectivity over the next 5 years. This includes $1 billion in new funding to connect rural and Indigenous communities. We are working with First Nations partners, including Indigenous-owned providers and all levels of government, to finalize priority projects. We will invest $2.5 billion to expand our 5G network. We will also invest $3 billion in network services, including expanding our cable network. Second, we will maintain a strong presence in Western Canada. This includes the creation of up to 3,000 net new jobs to support network investments with Calgary as our Western headquarters. Third, we will make connectivity more accessible. We will expand Connected for Success, our low-cost, high-speed internet program to low-income Canadians across the West. We will also expand it to eligible wireless customers across the country. Together, this program will be available to more than 2.5 million Canadians. This merger will bring together two entrepreneurial Canadian companies that are deeply committed to Canada and Canadians. As I conclude my remarks, let me leave you with a few thoughts. First, we have taken your feedback. Second, these transactions have gone through a robust and comprehensive review. Third, this transaction will increase competition. And fourth, we will invest substantially to connect more Canadians. These transactions will deliver more value, more connectivity, and more innovation for Canada. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Staffieri. Mr. McAleese, the floor is yours for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and committee members. My name is Paul McAleese. I'm the president of Shaw Communications, and I'm joined today by Trevor English, our Chief Financial and Corporate Development Officer. As this committee knows well, our industry is more important than ever to the lives and economic futures of Canadians. It is also on the verge of a fundamental change in technologies, requiring tens of billions of dollars of additional investment to position Canada for ongoing success in the digital era. Shaw Communications was founded on a goal of providing compelling choices for Canadians, and we are proud of the customer relationships that we've built and nurtured over the last 50 years. We are also sufficiently clear-eyed to know that the transactions with Videotron and Rogers offer the best path forward for those customers. With these transactions, Shaw's assets will be in the right hands for the long term, addressing Shaw's challenges, and more importantly, setting the stage for sustainable and enhanced competition, affordability, and innovation in Canadian telecommunications. Now, since we last appeared before you in 2021, much has changed. Many stakeholders, including this committee, expressed concerns about Freedom Mobile's future. In response, last June, we announced a very different approach that would see Videotron acquire all of Freedom Mobile. To be clear, Rogers will never own Freedom Mobile. To be further clear, there will continue to be 4 strong wireless competitors, each of British Columbia, Ontario, and Alberta. There is no company better placed than Videotron to extend and amplify Freedom's competitive impact. The Freedom Videotron wireless business will be an even stronger fourth carrier, covering over 30 million Canadians. The dynamic, newly empowered Freedom Videotron will have more than double the customer base, over 3 million subscribers, and all of the tools it requires to compete against the national carriers, including, critically, the 5G spectrum that Shaw does not possess. As the Competition Tribunal concluded in a decision unanimously affirmed yesterday by the Federal Court of Appeal, the new Videotron that will emerge from these transactions will be a more aggressive and effective competitor than the current present-day Freedom. The benefits of these transactions have been proven through a judicial process. So where is the remaining opposition coming from? It's coming from our competitors. And I would ask you to ask yourself why. The opening paragraph of the tribunal decision provides that explanation, and I quote, "A well-known adage in the competition law community holds that when competitors oppose a merger, it is often a good indication that the merger will be beneficial for competition. In this case, the opposition from the respondents to national competitors has been vigorous and far-reaching," end quote. Throughout the past 2 years, TELUS and Bell have been the most vocal opponents of these transactions, challenging them in every possible forum. As a result of the regulatory process, when these transactions close, TELUS and Bell will face the competition that they fear most. As you've heard, TELUS went so far as to undertake a well-documented corporate campaign called Project Fox, seeking to kill, shape, and slow the proposed transactions. As part of this campaign, TELUS conspired to replace Videotron with Global Live as the purchase of freedom. Global Live's chairman, Mr. Lacavera, who is very clearly comfortable playing Pinocchio to Darren Entwistle's Geppetto, is an odd choice for an operating partner. Mr. Lacavera has a dubious record of running a wireless company. I know that because I have a unique firsthand perspective. I operated what was Wind Mobile after Mr. Lacavera exited the building, and I have a deep understanding of the effort required to fix the many challenges that we inherited. And here's an example. I suspect that the majority of this committee and many of the people in this room are representative of the country at large and use an Apple iPhone in their everyday telecom needs. Prior to Shaw's investment, Apple refused to authorize the iPhone on the sale of Wind's network during Mr. Lacavera's tenure there as owner and CEO. This is in sharp contrast to Videotron, a proven strong competitor in wireless. Global Live owns no spectrum assets and has no recent operating experience in Canada's rapidly evolving wireless industry. The relationship between TELUS and Global Live was very clearly disclosed in the subpoenaed documents that TELUS provided through the recent tribunal proceeding. What we learned is that Global Live is a very clear surrogate for TELUS. Why would TELUS go to such lengths to kill, shape, and slow our proposed deals? The answer is very simple. As the tribunal held, these transactions will enhance competition in Alberta and British Columbia, where TELUS is the dominant provider. It may be obvious, but it cannot be forgotten. TELUS is not interested in creating stronger competition in Western Canada. The rigorous regulatory process has delivered the best possible outcome for Canadians. Further delays very clearly only benefit TELUS and Bell because they prevent the stronger competition these transactions will provide. It's time to move forward. These transactions provide a clear path to lower prices, more investment, greater innovation, and enhanced competition. Thank you for your time. Look forward to your questions.
Merci, Monsieur.
Thank you, Mr. McAleese. Mr. Pelado, you have the floor. Ladies and gentlemen, hello. We're honored to be here at this committee. My name is Pierre-Carl Pelado, and I am President and Chief Executive Officer of Quebecor. I am accompanied by Jean-François Lescarne, the Vice President of Finance of Videotron. About 2 years ago, I stood before you and said that Quebecor would remain the linchpin of competition for the benefit of Canadian telecommunications consumers. We have demonstrated beyond any doubt that it is these consumers who are the winners. This has been demonstrated for nearly 15 years in Quebec with our wireless service offering and has been noted by the CRTC, by Innovation, Science and Economic Development Canada, and by many market analysts like Wall and NordCD. Unlike third-party internet access companies, or TPIAs, we are a strong participant in the economy because of the billions invested in building our wireline and wireless networks while providing extremely low prices with our various brands, including the most recent one launched 4 years ago called Fizz. We now believe that a number of conditions are in place to expand our footprint and offer telecommunications services in British Columbia, Alberta, Manitoba, and Ontario.
To $3 billion was the only one that checked all the boxes. A successful regional player and disruptor, a strong balance sheet, solid experience, and innovative track record. The truth is that Videotron is the only real contender. It is therefore not surprising to see the Big Three fear the disruptive entry of Videotron into the wireless market outside Quebec. Le projet Fox.
Project Fox is a blatant example of TELUS's, shall we say, toxic and Machiavellian tactics. which include increased litigation, underhanded misinformation campaigns, and intensive lobbying to stoke opposition while seeking, among other things, to alienate Western Canada from Eastern Canada. All of this is being done to thwart the rollout of competition and the government's desire to bring favorable and innovative business conditions to Canadians. Bell and TELUS's opposition to the transaction is a perfect illustration that Videotron is the best solution to provide consumers with real and lasting competition.
A solid expansion plan to gain a strong foothold in the Canadian telecom market. It was even mentioned by the Competition Tribunal in its recent decision that was confirmed yesterday, and I quote, Videotron is an experienced market disruptor that has achieved substantial success in Quebec. It has drawn up upon that experience to develop very detailed and fully costed plans for its entry into and expansion within the relevant market in Alberta, British Columbia, as well in Ontario. We said it when Minister Champagne set out the conditions for the sales of Freedom Mobile, and we are stating it again. Videotron is in for the long haul, and it again committed to bringing down prices for the benefit of Canadians. We did it in Quebec, as confirmed by several reports, as we said. We actually have been doing it and for at least 15 years when we launched our first MVNO offering, which took place in 2006 on Rogers Network. On top of that, Videotron acquired VMedia last year, which will enable us to offer consumers in British Columbia, Alberta, Manitoba, and Ontario discounted multi-services bundle and innovative products, including mobile and internet, and even more competitive prices. We will bundle on better terms than anyone else, including Shaw Mobile, which is offering today. With
the exception of Eastlink in some maritime communities, all of the initiatives launched following the 2008 auction have failed. Global Hive, funded by foreign interests, and then purchased by VimpelCom, a company partly controlled by an oligarch who can no longer enter Canada, ended up years later with Shaw. Mobilicity, controlled by an American private equity firm, was bought by Rogers, and Public Mobile by TELUS. Only Quebecor, with Videotron, has succeeded and still succeeds in confronting Bell and TELUS. Our plan is simple. Continue to succeed in the wireless market that Canadians need. The CRTC and the government must also continue to create the right conditions, the most important of which are the review of roaming rates, the enforcement of the MVNO policy, and the application of penalties to stop anti-competitive actions. All means must be in place if we are to meet the public interests and the clear will of government, with updated government and regulatory policies in line with those enacted 15 years ago by the late Minister Jim Prentice. We will be the long-awaited fourth national player. But let's make sure that the government's will is respected by the national incumbents so that we can provide healthy and sustainable competition for Canadians. Thank you for your attention.
Merci, Monsieur.
Thank you, Mr. Pelato, and we'll open the discussion with Mr. Perkins with 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you all of you for coming to the important hearings today. I'd like to start off by just, for the viewers, outlining that companies, your companies, are built on leasing limited national assets of radio frequencies owned by Canadians. You have been given privileged access, protected from foreign competition by Canadians. With that comes a responsibility to Canadians to provide service to them at a reasonable cost. The result of this privileged and protected position is that Canadians pay amongst the highest cell phone and internet prices in the world, and your companies reap monopolistic profits. Rogers' cell phone net profit margin is 62%, and Videotron's 65%. Your profit margins show it's not the size of the country and the small population that drives up cell phone prices. There is less competition today than there was 10 years ago. Your companies bought up your competitors. As part of your privileged position, Liberals have enabled your lobbying access to officials during the decision-making process at an unprecedented level. Mr. Staffieri, as CEO of Rogers, during this transaction, you personally met with the Department of Industry more than 60 times and 5 times with the minister. So I'd like to know, were you negotiating the deal directly with the department?
Member Perkins, as we went through the process, it was an iterative process in terms of trying to come up with a solution that met the government objectives. We share your comments and this government's objective of more affordability for Canadians. And as you look to pricing at Rogers and for our industry, over the last several years, you've actually seen prices come down, and that's against a backdrop of increasing inflation. And as we discuss this, we can provide more details on that. But what I can tell you is we met with different government officials. It was really trying to find a solution that was going to increase competition. And what you saw come out of the tribunal process and was validated by the Court of Appeal yesterday is...
Steffi, I have limited time, so I appreciate that. But for transparency, will you table your officials, your executives, minutes from those meetings with this committee?
There is a process to make the relevant materials public, and we will follow that process.
I'd appreciate you considering that. Successful acquisitions obviously require job cuts. They generally don't involve job increases. And Rogers told the Competition Tribunal that it will realize efficiencies through job cuts in most areas of both companies. In speaking with your company insiders, I'm told that Rogers will actually cut 4,000 to 5,000 jobs in the combined entity, not the networking temporary jobs, I think, which you mentioned earlier. So are you going to cut 4,000 or more jobs?
As a result of this transaction, there will be a net investment in more jobs. What we do as a company is invest in networks so that we can serve our customers and give them better quality and coverage. That means we have to invest more. That's how we built this company. Our entrepreneurial DNA is to continue to invest more and more into networks. When you talk about the profit margins that you referenced earlier, most of that cash goes back to investing in infrastructure in this country.
My question was about job losses, not your profit margin in this time. Are you going to cut thousands of jobs in this merger?
There will be areas that have overlap, and we will look to redeploy resources in areas that are growing. We are a net growth company, and we see more opportunity for employment throughout the country.
Okay, I appreciate that. Mr. Pellado, in the past, your company has made commitments when it's acquired spectrum licenses to expand and create a cell phone business in Western Canada. But in fact, you've sold more than 100 of those licenses for over $300 million in profit. So I know you've made a lot of promises at the tribunal, but we're a little skeptical that, like your past promises to the government, you may not do it this time. So will you agree to be bound by the business plan you have tabled with the Competition Tribunal, or lose all of Freedom's spectrum licenses?
We participated in the spectrum auction since the first one took place in 2008. At that time, and as of today also, we intended to be a national operator. For the reasons where the auction went, sky through the roof, and one of the reasons why is that Global Live was bidding, with the others people money. In fact, that was foreign money at that time. We were caught with spectrum, and all the conditions, therefore, after the other auctions, were not all together to make sure that we have the capacity to invest and build a network. Today, with the policy that was established by the CRTC, in fact, this policy took place 2 years ago already. We call it the MVNO policy, which are providing the proper conditions to make sure that a fourth operator or any sort of operator will be able to operate.
I appreciate that, but my question wasn't about MVNOs. TechSavvy has launched an application before the CRTC to have a hearing on the undue preference, supposedly prices of this deal that have been given by Rogers to your company. If the CRTC rules against you on those preferential rates and you have to abide by the CRTC rates for access to the network, will you walk away from this deal?
Well, first of all, you will find out what the CRTC will do. We have a new chair right now, and I guess that it is important for her to make sure that, they will ask if, the prices for the TPIA are right or wrong. We don't know at this stage. We were partnered with Rogers in Quebec. We built network together, and we will continue as, we've been doing business with them. And this is the reason why, we have this agreement that we negotiated out of this transaction. It was not easy, and at the end of the day, I guess that, we were able to put all together the conditions to make sure that this fourth operator will succeed in the future. But also, and this is very important, by investing significant amount of money, as Tony Staffieri said, we're a business that have been investing in building networks to make sure that Canadians will continue to enjoy one of the best quality network in the world.
And highest prices.
Merci, Monsieur Pelado. Madame.
Thank you, Mr. Pelado. Ms. Lapointe, you have 6 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'd like to share my time with my colleague, Member Anthony House-Father.
To Mr. Staffieri. So in December, you released a statement and saying that this merger will, and this is a direct quote, bring more choice, more affordability, and more connectivity to Canadians, and that the transactions will likely result in an intensifying of competition. This morning, we heard from the Competition Bureau as well as other witnesses that this merger will have negative impacts for lower-income Canadians. We also heard that when it comes to the telecommunications sector, density matters. And we know that rural populations and rural communities often are negatively impacted by that. So can you describe for us today how greater affordability and connectivity will be achieved for these two populations?
We have a commitment to affordability, and my colleague Dean Prevost will walk through some of the plans that some of which we've already launched and will continue to launch to improve connectivity, as well as provide more affordability. There are two principles that I leave you with at the outset. We are committed to make investments in networks and infrastructure. That's what we do. As a business, we are aiming for better coverage and better quality for Canadians across the country. It may surprise you to know that we are the only wireless carrier that has a national network from coast to coast. That's what we do. We invest in networks. And in terms of affordability, we get up every day looking for more value add for our customers. And as I earlier stated, what you've actually seen is prices come down from Rogers over the last several years.
Thank you, Tony. Just let me add to that on 2 points. So first, let's take affordability, which is so important, as Tony has said. Something that we're bringing to the table that did not exist before in Western Canada is something we call Connected for Success. It has 2 key elements. One is low cost, in fact, substantially discounted, 70 to 80% off.
Thank you, Mr. Prévost. Unfortunately, I have very limited time. My second question is for Mr. McAleese, but first I would like to point out that as committee members, we appreciate all witness testimony, and that includes witnesses such as Anthony Acevera that appeared earlier here today. I can't help but draw a contrast between Canadians struggling with affordability and seeing some of Canada's wealthiest families gain significantly from this transaction. Shaw employs thousands of Canadians, and how are you ensuring that this deal not only benefits the owners of Shaw, but also your own employees who are also challenged by affordability issues?
Well, I think as the tribunal found and was upheld yesterday, this is a very pro-competitive series of transactions. The recent CPI data that was released by Stats Canada last week demonstrates that we're seeing considerable advances in the affordability of telecom across the board. That, of course, applies not just to our employees, but also to Canadians writ large. So I think our employees are representative of the broader Canadian population that's seeing really material increases in the quality of their overall service. It's often lost that while we sort of 10 times focus very specifically on pricing in the Canadian market, at the same time we're seeing massive advances in the quality of those networks, be it from 3G to 4G to 5G, or in the massive advances in the upload and download speeds available of our wireline. And all Canadians get to take advantage of those advantages.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McAleese. The floor is yours, MP Housefather.
Anthony, on dirait que tu es en sourdine.
Anthony, I think you're still muted.
It's probably your headset, Anthony. Perhaps while you figure this out, we'll turn to Mr. Lemire.
Sorry, Joel. Can you hear me now?
Oui, on t'entend.
Yes, we can hear you. You have the floor.
Beaucoup.
Yes, thank you. Sorry about that, Mr. Lemire.
First of all, thank you for giving me some time, Vivienne. And Mr. McAleese, I just want to echo Madame Lapointe's comments. I don't think attacking other witnesses is very appropriate. My first question for Rogers, and by the way, nice to see so many Anthonys on the panel. I wanted to ask the question about the NDA and that Global Live talked about. I used to be the general counsel of a multinational, and I'm very well aware of what NDAs are normally signed at the beginning of the process. Is it true that you asked Global Live in that NDA not to engage with government and to identify to you, and that you would have veto power over any investors in a transaction?
As part of the divestiture process that we undertook, Rogers together with Shaw, this was a sale of Freedom Wireless, large, complex transaction, and as you would expect, we went through a very rigorous and comprehensive process to solicit bids and vet those bids relative to the criteria that the government set that they wanted to see as a robust fourth wireless player. It's standard as part of that process that all bidders sign standard NDAs, non-disclosure agreements, to prevent sensitive information from being disclosed.
Yes,
and those are standard.
And I understand very well that they sign standard NDAs. What I'm saying is that the elements that were identified by Mr. Lacavera in his testimony are not standard in the NDA at the beginning of this type of a process. Is it true that that NDA required them not to speak with government and to identify to you and give you veto rights on investors? That would not be in a standard NDA.
The NDAs we deployed were standard NDAs that are used in the industry that all the other bidders signed in order to gain access to sensitive information in the data room. They are provided very standard in the industry, and those are the ones we deployed in this case for this sale process for all the bidders, as I said.
And did the other bidders sign your standard NDA with no changes?
There were very minor changes, if at all. And today we stand here looking at two transactions, one of them being Videotron acquiring Freedom Wireless. And Mr. Palladino can speak to the NDA he signed, which is the standard NDA that all the other bidders signed.
Merci
beaucoup.
beaucoup.
Mr. Chair, I assume, yeah.
Merci, Monsieur Housefather.
Thank you, Mr. Housefather. Mr. Lemire, you have the floor. Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, I'd like to mention that it would have been very interesting that TELUS appear today also. That's something I asked for from the clerk. So if they are not here, it's because they declined the invitation. Mr. Pelado, I'll start with you. During the acquisition of Freedom Mobile, you got a promise based on results, for example, reducing prices by about 20%. Is that really something you can deliver? And how can we be assured that you are willing and able to do that? Many people are wondering about that today. Thank you very much. Well, there aren't 42 different ways to succeed. We know that the issue of prices and pricing are very important elements in the success of a business.
Quebec.
Yes, in Quebec, we did have bundles of services, whether it was distribution, landlines, and wireless phone services, among others. What we were able to provide to Quebecers to gain access to over 23% of the market share is lower prices than what they had seen on the market previously. It's also true that, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, that we launched an entirely digital company or brand, Fizz, and the pricing there is even lower than what we've seen elsewhere. That's the strategy we'll be using in the regions and the markets that Freedom covers currently. And that's also true of markets that could be covered in the years and decades to come. Yes, we will reduce prices. We will use innovation, client service, which is something else that's very important to ensure that we know the success we've seen in Quebec over the past 10, 15 years. What guarantees did you give the minister or people on the ground to get these commitments? You said that the public policy has changed recently, that things are better for competition. This will help you keep costs low. What would prevent you from lowering prices in Quebec? Well, our prices in Quebec are some of the lowest in Canada. And there are even examples where for the same product, for example, the same number of gigabytes in our jargon for cell phones, Bell will, I have it here, is the same thing for their sub-brands, Virgin, for example, and our Fizz brand, what they sell for $39 and what we sell for $39, it's different. In British Columbia for 6 gigs, $45 instead of $39 for British Columbia, Ontario, and Alberta. That's the same thing with Alberta. It'll be $65 in Quebec and $80 in other provinces. I love looking at the Canadian newspapers. It's the same ad that gets taken out by Bell, let's say, and the only difference between the ads they take out in different provinces is the price, $10 to $15 or $15, $20. So when there is that gap in pricing, that's quite a significant one. That's 20 to 35%. I mean, we would all win from providing products that would catch customers' attention, and that's in conjunction with client service, in order to reach clients using the same strategy. And that's not a strategy that's super original or anything. It's a strategy, the type of strategy that is used across the world, across various industries. We're not saying we've been super original. However, I believe we are brilliant in our execution. You purchased and acquired VinMedia in August, and the tribunal stated that you had the ability to expand, but how would this acquisition help you reach your objectives? VinMedia is providing internet and television access, regulated and non-regulated. It already has a presence in various regions across the country, whether it's Vancouver, Alberta, Manitoba, Ontario. We decided that it would be an asset to be able to provide that in conjunction with others. Earlier, I talked about our success in Quebec by bundling various services. That's how we call it in our jargon. So acquiring the media gives us that possibility. Now, these obligations, because of what we saw in the last auctions, we have to buy or we have to build new networks over the next 7 years. So we have to look at businesses with their own networks. We've always looked at that as being an asset for a company and a measure of success. We started in 2006, as I mentioned, on Rogers Network with the intention to participate in an auction to buy spectrum. And that's what we've done, and that's why we are still today the ones who go and reach the largest market share of new subscribers. Thank you. I no longer have some time, but in your expansions, the region of Abitibi-Témiscamingue is not covered, so it'd be great to have that provided. Oh, I'd like to correct you. We launched the TPIA on on Bell's network because it has a monopoly in the Abitibi region in Quebec, and we will be building our own network to migrate the TPIs to our own network as we have done for all our clients across Quebec. Thank you very much.
Je serais perdu au
I would lost it, and I wouldn't know what I was doing here if at least once Mr. Lemire didn't mention Abitibi-Témiscamingue. So I'll give the floor to Mr. Massey now.
Brian, I believe you're on mute as well. Yeah, still on mute. I think it's the connection. Yeah, so the clerk is suggesting you unplug and plug it back and maybe look at the little switch on the...
Work, Mr. Chair. Thank you. That's weird. Thank you so much. And thank you for the witnesses being here. Being the New Democrat on this committee for 15 of my 20 years in Parliament, I've seen a lot of companies come and go. I've seen a lot of promises being made. And I want to remind, I think the public in the process here is that having the tribunal panel was a political decision. It was made by legislation. It's not a pure system by any means. It's an appointed process. And to hammer that point through, this committee under C-27 will also have to consider another tribunal creation, which could potentially undermine the privacy commissioner. So I want to make it clear is that upholding the tribunal's decision is not independent of politics in itself. It's shaded in its birth of being part of political decision-making, and hence that's one of the reasons I think why the minister still has a lot of choices here. Now, I do want to note a couple of quotes here that I have. In terms of spectrum, we don't have any plan for now. We feel it is a great value. It will become even a greater value. And that was you, Mr. Palladieu, in 2009. And also your colleague in 2013, Mr. Departier, said, as for the spectrum we have acquired Ontario and Alberta and British Columbia, we could not pass on the opportunity to acquire high-value spectrum at such an attractive price. And that was a carve-out that was done specifically. And then lastly, your colleague, Mr. Dion, said that today's license acquisitions in Ontario, British Columbia, and Alberta continue our strategy of buying spectrum at advantageous prices, mainly to support Videotron's operations in Quebec. And so from that time period, you didn't provide a lot of rollout. Even actually the industry ISED noted that you left 83% of rural residents in the area with no coverage. And during this process, we've had COVID, where this is very serious for other businesses, but also to the pocketbooks of people. And then also schools, business, telehealth. Those areas were left without competition. They were left with higher prices, and sometimes they were left with services. So my question to you is, what makes us believe now at this point in time that you're actually going to be in the race, you're actually going to compete, and when there's no actual way for us to actually follow through with any type of punishment, if you don't, what makes it comforting for those people that were left behind when Quebecor didn't actually act on the spectrum that they acquired, and more importantly, actually acquired income and revenue from that spectrum that was provided for? So it's a situation I think is pretty serious, and I think it's one that has to be answered, because if we are going to have a disruptor, that's what the tribunal noted, it has to be one that's actually going to be in place and forward thinking.
Well, first of all, I would say that we've been investing significant amount of money, after buying Spectrum in 2008 to build the network we built in Quebec, servicing what we got today as roughly 23% of the market. That's significant against very competitive market. We have 3 companies and 8 brands. We're looking to do the same. We're going to pay $2.9 billion to acquire Freedom. As you probably know, also we invested in the last auction roughly $450 million that was paid to the government of Canada. So then, therefore, we are really we hear it more than in the skin game here. It's significant in terms of money that we've been investing. We have responsibility against our shareholders. We will continue to make sure that at the end of the day they will be able to benefit with the growth that we've been able to provide for them. Also, being able, to service again, the customers that we are now providing, service for in the regions that we will now cover with the acquisition of Freedom.
So, okay, so your loyalty, of course, is, and I don't blame the companies for doing what you have done. And I mean, it's a system that's regulated by us at the end of the day in terms of Parliament. It's a public asset, being the spectrum. But I still have concerns of not recognizing that the cost has been talked a lot here about the situation. But the products that you have and the services that you have that didn't get rolled out hurt people, either economically or limited their capabilities to participating in society. So I'd asked all of the companies here to respond on what they feel their obligation is in the future and in the past of actually not acting on spectrum. And perhaps you can all respond with telling us how much spectrum you didn't actually activate and left out there on the market with less competition. If it could go across the board, I'd appreciate it, please.
To start, MP Massey, at Rogers, we have always invested in spectrum. Over the last 8 years alone, we invested over $8.5 billion in spectrum. We've invested more in spectrum than any other Canadian wireless player over the years. We quickly deploy that. Most recently, we acquired 5G spectrum, and you saw us roll that out in 5G and 5G Plus across the nation as quickly as technology and permitting would allow us. It's in our interest to deploy that spectrum aggressively.
Mr. Massey.
Who wants to go next, please?
Certainly.
I'm looking for what spectrum that you didn't deploy.
Mr. Massey, Shaw has met the license conditions of all spectrum that it's ever acquired.
The license conditions, but did you actually not deploy spectrum?
Well, license conditions are exactly what they infer. We have met all the conditions.
Right, but that doesn't mean that you deployed and used all your spectrum is what I'm asking.
I appreciate, Mr. Massey, that there are some of the spectrum is well within its licensing period still in terms of the need to deploy. So we have a period of time in which we're allowed to deploy it under the conditions of that, and we have met all of those obligations.
Yeah, no, I guess, I'll turn it over soon, but I think this is a good example of the frustrations Canadians feel is because I've asked specifically about whether you actually used all your spectrum, but what you're saying is you're meeting the obligations. So we all understand that because we know that the government actually doesn't really push this very hard and we haven't seen much action on the past. I was wondering whether or not the Shaw, spectrum, as some of it might be languishing somewhere and not competing, and that's a legitimate thing because it's a public asset. So Mr. Palado, maybe you can, what percentages are you sitting on spectrum? If you're not, if you're deployed at all, I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, well, we deployed all the spectrum we bought for the province of Quebec. We've been there. The last one being, the 3,500, which will be the key driver for 5G. And all companies in Canada is deploying it. Some are deploying faster than others. We're certainly also in the same game. For the spectrum that we are not deployed, it was deployed after the sale by Rogers and by Shaw which were the acquire of the spectrum we bought, but we didn't use because of not proper conditions in terms of commercial, as I said earlier. I mentioned that, now the conditions are all together. The MVNO policy by the CRTC established in 2021. The TPIA also is policy that are available to make sure that conditions are met and provide success for new operators.
Merci, Monsieur Pelado. Monsieur Martin.
Thank you very much. Mr. Généreux, the floor is yours. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Pelado, I hope you will be able to make a few jokes, even if it's very serious today. I'm very pleased to see you here and to see that you're also investing in another country. As a Quebecer, I'm saying that this is a joke.
I have a number of questions. I would love to get a quick answer to my questions. We understood that you're already a partner with Rogers in Quebec, and you'll become further partners with them in Western Canada. There's a lawsuit of $850 million filed by you against Rogers. I'm in business as well, so I was wondering how you can sue your partner on the one hand, and then going on to forge new agreements with them to develop new markets on the other hand. I figure that if you are suing Rogers, it's because they didn't meet your expectations in the past. Is that not something that concerns you? To see the conditions for the deal with Rogers in Western Canada for mobile data based on what you've seen in Quebec? Because I think the lawsuit is about your relationship in Quebec. How do you see that element, which seems a bit contradictory? We are associated with Rogers. In 2006, as I mentioned, we became an operator on the Rogers network until we purchased our own spectra, and built our own networks. And also, we're calling it Bellis, Bell and Telus, because they have common networks and they share the spectrum that they each bought. So in terms of that, yes, there was a misunderstanding, which we fixed. And I have the pleasure of announcing to you that we have come to an agreement on this, and that from now on, well, we had very useful and beneficial relationships on each of our ends with the previous presidents, whether it was Nadir Mohamed or Mr. Safieri now and others. We have come back to better footing, and we believe we'll be able to further strengthen this association that has existed for now 15 years. All right, my colleague, Mr. Perkins, asked Mr. Safieri whether there would be job losses, and he said yes in certain sectors. In Québécois, do you see jobs being created or lost through this agreement? You're asking me? Yes. Yes, as I mentioned, it's an obligation, actually. We need to build a network. If we use the facilities that are those of the current holders, there's a period that needs to be respected. Mr. Safieri indicated what happened. We've seen it here, and Shaw has as well. These are billions of dollars that are spent in building networks, which is not necessarily the case for TPIAs. And that's why the CRTC, also with the wisdom of the government, has required from now on that those who have the privilege to be MVNOs, the requirement to build these networks so that they can contribute to Canada's economic activity? Well, we heard that Videotron's prices are lower than Freedom's. One of the conditions is that the prices eventually come down. What we can see here, and I have two web pages that I printed out here. We see that there's a $50 package from Freedom, and the equivalent is $65 at Videotron. So what we do understand that you will have to ensure that your prices are lower than what you're currently offering. But right now, Videotron's prices are higher than others. Well, I'll ask my colleague Jean-François Lescade to comment and answer to what you said. Yes, thank you, Pierre-Carl, on that. It's very important to understand what you're comparing. The best evidence is our competitors' reaction. As we showed earlier, the competitors reacted with much lower prices in Quebec than elsewhere. Why? Because Freedom right now does not provide 5G, while we have committed to providing it very quickly after the acquisition, and Freedom limits national roaming. So right now, what clients are buying from Freedom, and we've seen this numerous times, that's pre-transaction diligence. The question you get asked is, are you going to stay in town or are you going to be leaving? Because you have one price with Freedom if you stay in town. If you go from Calgary to Edmonton or Halifax to elsewhere, you'll be very limited in how you can use your data. The 20 gigabytes deal with Freedom comes on with only 1 gigabyte that you can use outside your local area. So that really means that there's a disadvantage. In Quebec, we don't have that disadvantage. When Fizz and Videotron gives you a package, it's with roaming across the country. Yes, and that's something that's very important to repeat. You know, roaming charges are a large part of clients' bills. And that's even more true now because we use data. Nobody talks on the phone anymore, or very little. Cell phones are used through data. If you're not on your direct network, you have roaming charges. But first of all, in Canada, they've stayed the same for the past 8 years, and they are some of the highest in the world. Mr. Pelado, yes, in all the European countries, they are at $2 instead of. The interpreter notes that numerous people are talking at once. Okay, but who sets those roaming charges? The government or the industry? Well, by the government, the CRTC, which determined that there would be such a rate for this type of use. And like I just said, it's been 8 years since the rates have been updated, and they're 5 times higher than what we've seen in Europe. Well, sorry, Mr. Généreux, you've already had 3 minutes and 15 seconds more, and Mr. Erskine-Smith, you have 5 brief minutes.
Thanks, Joelle. Rogers, Mr. Staffieri, on the testimony we've heard today, Rogers received a better financial offer than the deal that they ultimately arrived at with Videotron. Now, I want the best deal for competition in a sector that sorely needs competition. So walk us through, why would Rogers accept less money in this deal unless it also meant less competition?
As I said earlier, we went through a process that was very comprehensive and robust. We looked at the criteria that was in front of us, and this government, the minister in particular, as well as previous successive governments of this country, look for a fourth wireless competitor that is robust. And the minister went further, and he wanted a remedy that was going to have a credible acquirer of Freedom Wireless. Credible meaning that they had experience as an operator.
Wait. Okay, so you're telling me that it wasn't your decision to pick Videotron. You would have picked Global Live, but the minister made you pick Videotron. That sounds like your answer. Is that your answer?
I'm walking you through the criteria that the minister laid out for us. And as we work through those criteria in terms of having a balance sheet, having operating experience, but importantly, having a very credible path to 5G. Videotron had purchased.
You would have preferred, Rogers would have preferred to accept the Global Live offer, but you felt you needed to accept lesser money from Videotron because of the government wanted you to do so. That's what you're basically telling us, from what I can tell. Is it yes or no?
We went with an option that met the criteria, and ultimately, the tribunal and the appeal court found.
Not my question. Not my question. Why would you accept less money? You have a duty to shareholders. Why would you accept less money unless it also came with less competition?
We had to find a solution that was pro-competitive. Price is only one factor of the variables to ensure a robust fourth carrier. We have a solution with Videotron that is the most viable in ensuring the fourth wireless competitor in Canada.
Okay, so let me put it a different way then. I don't know what's a better deal. I have no idea. We've heard testimony today. Competition Tribunal heard some testimony. Federal Court heard a hearing as well. Minister has been seized with this file. I don't know, sitting here today, what is a better deal in terms of competition? Is it Videotron? Is it Global Live? But why should you, Rogers, the most dominant player in a heavily concentrated sector that matters so much to affordability of Canadians, why should you get to decide who the fourth player is?
We went through a process together with Shaw looking at alternatives. We had many bidders. In fact, we put two other bidders.
Not my question. Why should you decide?
We went through an iterative process with the regulatory bodies. In fact, we
Not my question. Why should you decide? You're the most dominant player in this marketplace. Why do you get to decide who the fourth player is? Do you think that's fair?
We went through the process to ensure the outcome was the most viable fourth player in the country.
I know these are lines you have memorized, but those are not answers to my question. Why should you get to decide? This is Spectrum, by the way, that was discounted for Freedom, ultimately came to Shaw. It is a public good, ultimately. That's why the minister gets a say on the transfer of this license. Why should you get to decide who the recipient is?
We were in the position, as a result of our agreement with Shaw, to look at alternatives that were going to be the best divestiture alternative for Freedom. And we looked at the criteria that the government put in front of us, and we put forward the most viable option meeting all the criteria. And what you saw come out of...
I have no idea what that means, but I've got a question for Shaw. What happens if the deal isn't approved?
Well, that's a scary proposition. We faced a lot of challenges, in 2021 when we decided to sell the company. Those challenges and issues that we're facing haven't gotten any better. In fact, they've gotten worse. We don't have a credible path towards true 5G. We don't own the spectrum. Mr. Pallado does. That's why it makes so much sense to put Freedom and Videotron together. There's been substantial investments made by our key competitor on the wireline side of things, TELUS. We continue to be outflanked by TELUS on numerous fronts, and we're underinvesting versus others.
Rogers is the only partner that you could possibly sell to. 83% of your revenue is wireline, and that's what Rogers wants. That's
yes.
Why this is such a profitable deal for them. Is there no other partner other than Rogers?
Smith,
no other partner other than the most dominant
we firmly believe that this set of transactions is pro-competitive and enhances competition both on the wireline and wireless side of things.
You told me the same thing about the sale of Freedom to Rogers until everyone told you it wasn't, and then you had to spin it off. So, Shaw, you painted a picture of competitors fighting the merger, and you basically said to us, if competitors are fighting the merger, then it must actually be good for competition. But let's pause for a second there, because it's not just competitors fighting the merger. It's independent experts like Ben Klass and Michael Geis. It's the majority of Canadians who are expressing concern through polling and certainly in our inboxes with this merger. And so what do you make of the fact that it isn't just competitors, but it seems to be an overwhelming majority of Canadians who don't have trust in this merger because they don't trust Shaw, they don't trust Rogers, they don't trust this heavily regulated oligopoly to deliver affordability for Canadians?
Mr. Smith, I think we went through a very comprehensive and long regulatory process that was adjudicated through a very thoughtful tribunal that came to the conclusion that was reaffirmed yesterday by the Federal Court of Appeal about these series of transactions are pro-competitive and increase competition and will lead to better innovation, better pricing over the long term for Canadians.
Whereas what I read, and I know I'm out of time, Joel, but what I read is that this deal won't substantially lessen competition. And as I've said to others, I'm not interested in that threshold and that question. I want to see what is best for competition. And what I see right now is very wealthy individuals saying this is going to be pro-competitive, something they've said time and time and time again. And Canadians just don't trust it anymore because these wealthy individuals are wealthy at the expense of our pocketbooks for an essential service. Anyway, thanks very much for the scripted answers.
Thank you, Nate. We'll now turn it to Monsieur Lemire pour 2 minutes 30.
2.5 minutes, Mr. Lemire. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Staffieri, I'll try to ask my colleague Erskine Smith, Mr. Erskine Smith's question maybe in different words. If you had sold first, and if you weren't that actor, if you had sold your assets to Bell, TELUS, Global Live, somebody other than Videotron, do you think that the Competition Bureau Tribunal would have approved that transaction?
It's not my decision to decide what the Competition Bureau would or would not have approved. What I can tell you is that we looked at the criteria, and as you look to the criteria of what was going to be a credible fourth wireless player in this country, the criteria that the minister laid out, which are very intuitive, by the way, is the buyer had to have a strong balance sheet, which Videotron has. They're a public company, they've been in business, and not just to close the transaction, but to continue to make the investments that are needed in a network across the country. The buyer had to be a credible operator. Videotron operates today in both cable and wireless. They've demonstrated the ability to disrupt the market with competitive pricing. And finally, they needed to be credible in building a 5G network. There were no other bidders that had 5G spectrum, which is very critical to the extent that Videotron had. And so we chose the one that we believe most met. I've got to tell you, the process was very iterative. If you look to the tribunal documents, we actually proposed 2 other bidders early in the process, and they were rejected. And so as we went through that iterative process with the government, it became clear what the most viable option was going to be, and that's the one we recommended. And as you heard earlier, the tribunal, through an exhaustive trial, 31,000 pages, 1,900 exhibits, 44 expert witnesses, and they concluded and validated that this is going to be pro-competitive series of transactions.
La prochaine date clé, si je me trompe pas, c'est
The next problem was 31, or the next key date rather is January 31st. What happens if that's everything's not finished before then?
The 3 parties you see here today have agreements that go to January 31st. We are working hard to get this transaction completed by that date. We have continued to provide the minister with all the information, and as he's publicly said, he is going through the due process before he makes his decision. I don't want to speculate what will happen if it goes beyond January 31st. That'll be something that we'll all need to take back. But right now, we're working with the deadline in the agreements that we have in front of us.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Lemire, Mr. Massé, our last round of questions for 2.5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And let's be clear on that. I've read the tribunal decision a number of times, and what's key is there won't lessen competition. If I had a constituent or anybody else, the business community that uses services, say that that's a threshold we should actually go towards, they'd look at me as insane. They'd look at me and say, like, that's all you can expect is it won't lessen competition at a point in time where we've actually used a public asset to create basically highways and tollways in the sky and made things uncompetitive in many respects. My question is to Shaw with Mr. English. You mentioned that it would be a scary proposition. So given the fact that we have so many uncertainties here, what's scary about it in the sense that it's going to be the family? Is it going to be the shareholders? Why should the public and the minister rescue Shaw for basically giving up in many respects by not bidding on spectrum in the last auction and then basically throwing in the towel ever since?
Well, Mr. Massey, I wouldn't suggest that I don't accept your suggestions that we've given up and thrown in the towel. It's been a very difficult and long process, and I think we've done a good job running our business during the last 2 years with this level of uncertainty facing us. The reality is, Mr. Massey, why we need to sell the business was about the investments going forward, and they're substantial within wireline and wireless. And frankly, we don't have the operational or financial scale to make those investments going forward in a significant manner. The fact of the matter is, this series of transactions now put both of our businesses in the right hands of Videotron and Freedom together to invest in wireless in the future, and also with Rogers in terms of our wireline business, and continue to invest and innovate and compete for Canadians in Western Canada against TELUS. And if this deal doesn't go ahead, we don't have a plan B.
And some of the highest prices and profit margins, and then to suggest that that wasn't enough says a lot about the current state of the Canadian telco industries. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Massey. And that concludes our second round of questions. Yes, Mr. Perkins.
Just before we conclude, I have a request, but I do understand that Rogers has extended the bond deal to the end of the year, so there is more time to deal with this. But could Rogers please table with the committee the standard NDA that you presented to all? I assume it was the same for all potential buyers with this committee, please.
Provide that standard NDA document.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Staffieri. So through the clerk, you can submit that. And I want to thank our witnesses for this last panel. Thank you for taking the time. And thank you, colleagues, for this enlightening and long day. Juste pour que vous sachiez, il y aura pas...
Just so you know, there will be no meeting in camera given the time now. We don't have the resources in place to continue that meeting. Thank you very much. Thank you to everybody. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you to the interpreters.